Hello, Annie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, Annie, and you?
I'm doing well.
Annie, what is your last name?
Payne?
P-A-Y-N-E?
Yes.
Very good. Okay. I see I have another participant, EAS. So I has to unmute. Okay, you can still hear me, Annie?
I can hear you, yes.
Okay, great. All right. I'm going to wait a few more minutes to see if anybody else joins us. On the line today, I've got two parties, Scott with Great Valley Designs, who's the landscape architect, and Seraphin, who is on the line from AO Architects, who are the primary consultants that I think are relevant to our discussion tonight. So I've got a power slide prepared, and I think I'm ready to share my screen, but I just want to make certain that a few more people might want to join us. Are you on mute, Annie?
Got it. Okay. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm cooking dinner, so there's a lot of background noise right now.
Been there and done that.
Yeah.
Please disregard. Hello, please disregard.
Hello. I don't know how to talk on this thing.
You're talking just fine. I hear you.
How do I mute it? That's the next question.
And there's down in the lower left, there's a symbol of a microphone, and you can kind of at will click it on and off if you wish. Now you're off. So what is your name? I don't want to call you please disregard. What is your at least your first name?
I won't be communicating. I'm just here to listen.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Well, I'll wait a few more minutes before I introduce the project and start the power slide. So
Can I say that if I muted it, how come you still hear me?
I think you back off of mute again. I mean, click on it again. Oh, there you go. Now you're on mute. Scott and Seraphin, can you hear me all right? Okay.
Hey, Russ, can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yes, we're
Hi,
getting
Russ.
an assemblage of folks here, and I'm about ready to start, I think. Scott, can you hear me all right?
Yes, Russ, I can.
Very good, very good. Okay, so we've got a PowerPoint presentation to share with everybody who joins tonight. And before I get into the PowerPoint presentation, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Russell Shaw. I represent the applicant, FBA Multifamily. And we have some of our team members on the meeting tonight. Like I said earlier, the landscape architect and the structural architect, as well as some of the representatives from the ownership. And we would like to just fundamentally present the project to you today and get some feedback in regards to the merits of the project. And in so doing, I've got an opportunity to share my screen and start the PowerPoint. So I might do that. If anyone has any questions before we start, I'd be more than happy to try to field them. Otherwise, I'll get started on our presentation. Okay,
I have no questions right now, but I'll probably ask them at the end of the presentation.
this is Annie talking.
That is correct.
Okay, I recognize the voice. Okay, so I'm going to try to share screen here, and I'll start the presentation. So now you should see, hopefully you can see my screen. Seraphin, can you see my screen okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So here's our introductory slide. We're calling the project the Blossom Avenue Apartment Homes. It's located on the southeast corner of Blossom Avenue and Railroad in the city of Suisun City. FPA is a fully integrated company that develops, manages, owns and maintains all their properties. And they have over 125,000 multifamily units over the US. And they're actually one of the largest real estate multifamily owners in the country. Very stable group, highly liquid, and they're very experienced in preparing and presenting and managing multifamily opportunities in and around the United States. Our design team consists of about 5 local professional consultants and 2 others that are out of the local area, but Architects Orange, like I mentioned, is the architects. Carlson, Barbie, and Gibson, aka CBG, is civil engineers. Scott Vollmer represents the landscape architecture. Then Wallace and Cole, Ballard Associates, AEI, and E-Corp all had some ancillary roles in preparing the application for the city and studying the impacts that the project may or may not have on the environment. So a project overview is it's 9 acres at the southeast corner, like I said. The allowable density for a project in this zone in the city is 20 units per acre. Accordingly, we have 180 residential garden style apartment homes. Some of the amenities that we're bringing forward is a very large landscape common area and a larger than normal common area amenity, such as barbecue areas, potluck, dog run, clubhouse, and other amenities that you'll see later in some of the slides. This is a picture of the site as it is vacant right now. I'm sure most of you know where it's at. It's fundamentally surrounded by development. However, to the north is the railroad, Union Pacific, I think, Railroad Avenue or Railroad Way. And across from the railroad tracks, there's less highly developed properties, but developed nonetheless. So this is considered an infill development in today's standards. One of the very most important and most fundamental goals of the project was to orient the buildings and provide a high quality project that's sensitive to the neighborhoods surrounding it, and more particularly to the south and to the east. And so the orientation of the buildings was very important. And we went through a number of iterations on preparation of the site plan to make certain that we maximized what we could in terms of setbacks and still provide a high quality product that to balance the land uses in the city of Suisun City, and will bring forward some much needed workforce housing entry-level housing opportunity in this area. So the site plan is, and I hope you can see my cursor, the primary entrance comes off of Blossom Avenue. And you come in here, and right up front is the clubhouse, leasing office, and behind it are the amenities that we'll see later in a slide with more detail. It's gated, and there's 2 access points that ingress and then egress here. The buildings are laid out with ample separation between them. We do have an emergency vehicle access for egress and ingress for emergency vehicles only, with a gate at Railroad Avenue. And then we have another ingress and egress emergency vehicle only access off the extension of Amber Drive on the south property line. Now, the orientation of the buildings and the layout was extremely well vetted, in my opinion. You'll notice that the buildings on the east side are set back substantially from the property line. In that location, you could actually have those buildings as close as 5 feet under the city zoning codes. However, in a later slide, I'll demonstrate that these 2 buildings, building 6 and building 7, are set back over 100 feet from the adjoiners on the east. And then on the south, building 7 is facing, the end cap is facing the extension of Amber Drive, so it looks down on Amber Drive. And then building 1 is 108 feet away from the property line. So the idea was to buffer ourselves from on the south and on the east to maintain the privacy of the single family adjoining residents. Accordingly, what we tried to bring forward is a special landscape treatment in that regard. And we were fundamentally putting in a double layer, and I'll let Mr. Vollmer speak to that after a bit, but we're putting in a double layer of landscaping buffer opportunity that's robustly populated by English privet hedges, which grow very easily in this elevation, as well as they grow tall and dense, and then backed up by Afghanistan pines and Italian cypresses to create a pretty large buffer along those edges against the single family residential. And that was really one of our fundamental goals, is to bring forward a quality project, but still maintain the integrity of the neighborhood to the best of our ability. So the setbacks will be discussed in a later slide. Then also along Railroad Avenue, we've got a 8-foot high decorative wall, which is a buffer wall between ourselves, the project, and Railroad Avenue. It'll be a split face masonry, which will be attractive on the railroad side. And it serves 2 purposes. It attenuates the noise for the project residents, as well as this wall plus the buildings within the project will attenuate the railroad noises to the benefit of the single family residents that are to the south and to the east. So this bullet point number 5 kind of discusses that, the sound aspects. And then with respect to the residents within the project, we have special window treatments that will help keep the noises from on the 2nd and 3rd levels down to an acceptable decibel rating based upon the the Suisun City Code. Here, this shows I apologize for the resolution, but the intent of this slide was to show the setbacks that I mentioned earlier. 108 feet at this location, 78 feet, 79 feet here with this end cap. This end cap on building 7 and the end cap on building 1 have also special architectural treatments with high windows, transom windows that allow light to get into the units However, it doesn't allow the residents to view out that south end cap. Then here, this is 109 feet separation between the property line, not the home, but the property line and the face of the building. And in this location higher on building 6, 101. And then building 5, which is adjacent to the self-storage facility. If you take and go to this residential unit here, then you've got 95 feet. So the code on those, again, to remind you, the code is 5 feet, in these cases. So we've been very considerate of those, trying to maximize those setbacks to the benefit of the adjoiners. Some of the community benefits is that primarily,
Hey.
Go ahead. I'm
Can I
sorry.
ask a quick question? Sorry. So that there's an entrance going to the adjoining from Amber Drive. Is that entrance to get to the apartment complex?
No, ma'am. It's a entrance just for emergency vehicles. So if there's a fire and the residents need to evacuate, they could in the event of a fire, but it's primarily for ingress for emergency vehicles as well as the one off of Railroad Avenue. So they're considered a EVA or an emergency vehicle access only. We don't want our residents to drive through the neighborhood to get access to the site. And so there'll be a fire gate there with some sort of a Knox, either a crash gate or a Knox box where they can actually unlock the Knox box and put in their code or a key, and the gate opens up. But otherwise, it's gated, and it's not for full-time residents to use. No, ma'am.
Okay, but the gate, is it it's gonna be like an iron gate where it has like open slots, right? Where we can see through into the apartment complex or into the property?
Yes. You would have, it'd be a wrought iron gate with slats at 4 or 6 inches on center. But again, well, look, you'd see it if you're looking down the extension of Amber Way, you'd see the end cap of that building 7. But from the adjoining residents on either side of that Amber Drive extension, they won't be looking at the building. And then likewise, the folks in building 7 can't see out that south end cap. So it's sort of a benign environment, but it's there for the safety, welfare, and benefit of the residents within the project. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Of course, thank you. So, one of the upside potentials is that, right now it's a vacant site and it hasn't been developed. A long time ago, it was used for agricultural purposes, but infill development is kind of the way of the future for California, for cities such as Suisun City and adjoining Fairfield and Vacaville and whatnot, because the state of California wants to nurture this type of infill for the benefit of not only providing residential opportunities in an environment that is starving for more reasonably priced housing opportunities, but also infill of development will help the air quality of these individual air basins by reducing their trips to schools, work, and shopping opportunities. So infill development is really a vehicle for the state of California to bring forward more residential opportunities for folks in a environment that how would I say it, is starving for that commodity. And it's the social and economic and environmentally right thing to do for the state of California. This property has been zoned for this purpose, and we're trying to bring forward a project that complies with all the city standards, but still is respectful of the adjoiners on all 3 sides. So let me continue here. I just talked about infill development. So these first 3 bullet points kind of hit on the opportunity or the advantages of infill development. And this project went through about, at least 10 iterations before we landed on something that we were happy with to bring forward to the city. And we spent a considerable amount of time and resources to nurture something that we thought would be a good blend for bringing forward the housing in this infill environment. And it will then transform this vacant piece of property into a vibrant community. This is a rendering of the entrance off of Blossom, and you'll see there as you come in first, you see the clubhouse. That's where both the customers, potential lessees could stop and talk to the business folks, but they're also within that house that houses recreation center, lounge, postal opportunities, and just the basic necessities of an apartment office that helps the residents with all their functions. Now, Seraphin is with Architects Orange, and I might like to have Seraphin chime in after I show you this slide. And this is a blow-up site view, plan view of the clubhouse opportunities. And you can see it's broken down into opportunity for showers, for the pool, the spa, inside lounge, and then the actual clubhouse there, it has a recreation area that looks out on the pool. And to the east is a barbecue area and a tot lot. And so it's a nice kind of in the center of the project opportunity where it can feed the residents in the surrounding apartment or units can feed to that quite easily through just walking to the facility. This larger area down here on the south adds to the buffer with the residents to the south, as well as functions as a bioretention opportunity that detains and cleans the stormwater before it exits out to the stormwater system of the municipality. I wanted to include these two slides so you could get a feel for the English privet hedge and the cypress and Afghani pines. This is a view looking from the southeast corner to the northwest where this emergency vehicle access is. You can see the backside of the clubhouse and the tot lot, but you see next to this wooden fence that's existing on the south side of the project is the hedge, and then backed up by the trees that grow above the hedge. And I've got another slide along the east boundary, which sort of duplicates that concept. And this has been very carefully prepared to be true to form. It's once these trees and the hedge reach maturity, it'll be very difficult for anybody from the second or third floor to see anything other than the rooftops of the adjoiners. Now, the project, if you look at the architectural style, this is traditional craftsman style architecture. The last rendering before I pass it off to Seraphin is just a view, a bird's eye view from Blossom Avenue and Railroad intersection. This shows the wall that'll act as a buffer between the travel corridor and the project, as well as we're going to provide a 10-foot wide pathway that doubles up as a bicycle path as well as a pedestrian pathway. And it'll also facilitate some fixing the drainage that's along that roadside ditch that is now somewhat dysfunctional. We'll put in a ditch that'll handle the water from the east to the west and let it flow nicely, so there won't be any pools out there that are probably existing today with having some of the problems with standing water. So with respect to the architecture, I'm going to click on the building elevations, but I'd like to introduce Seraphin with Architects Orange, let him describe the intent and goals of the architectural styling, and with that being said, Seraphim, can you take it away?
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. This is Serafin Moran, and I'm a principal at AO. When we were working on the project with Russ, obviously much care and attention were given to the architectural treatment. We were very concerned on, or put a lot of effort into making sure that the building doesn't look monolithic or heavy, or it's a we wanted to break the scale down into a much more cohesive and understandable scale. That was very important to us. So to the extent that we can create a pedestrian scale, give it varied forms, making sure that the roof profile is has a lot of articulation to it, and also the plane has a lot of articulation to it. So you can see here, obviously architecture is just one part of it. The landscape plays a heavy part in creating a very livable, pedestrian-friendly scaled building. So a lot of efforts were given on gables, double gables, treatment of some brackets, some kickers, creating trims at the ground floor or baselines at the ground floor that give it that anchors the building, and then having lighter colors kind of permeate the upper floors and also give it some texture. As you can see, the middle gable at our central building has some lap siding, which really gives it a greater texture and sense of surface, different surface planes. And so that's sprinkled throughout the project. This is another version of it. On this one's the end cap, or we call it the side on, that gets those treatments as well. Russ, I can speak more, but I think I don't want to overwhelm the description of it. I think it's pretty self-explanatory for the most part, but I just wanted to bring out some of the concerns that we had about how we were going to treat the architecture.
You might talk about the colors too, the soft, natural hues, and if you want to, Seraphin.
Yeah, that's the other part. In a craftsman tradition, it's always meant to be anchored in the earth type colors, whether it's the sage greens or the soft whites or the soft creams. Really very, very ground, appealing more to the senses of the natural environment. So this is the idea here. Keep it very light and airy as well.
This slide purposefully didn't show any landscaping so that you can get the feel for, the base colors that brings forward and it personifies the craftsman style that Seraphin made mention to. So I want to show you the clubhouse as well, and maybe Seraphin can talk about that as also. It's I believe it's a 3,900 square foot. Is that correct, Seraphin?
Yes, that's about the right size. Again, the clubhouse is the first thing that you see as you get on the project off of Blossom. So that needs to have a very good impression. This is a one-story volume to the extent that we can, again, animate it with gables and smaller gables and bigger gable forms, some dormers that give it a little charm on the roof. Again, the color pattern is also earth tone in its execution. Again, we wanted to just remain true to the architecture, being that of a very elegant, very classic craftsman style of architecture.
I like the dormers in part of it here. It's very attractive.
Correct.
So this is just various views of the clubhouse. This would be the side view, and this is the view from the pool. You can see that the exercise area is the area with the tall glasses and tall glass glazing. And then the other area to the left that's popped out is where the lounge is. So it'll be a very attractive building and a place for the residents to congregate and just relax or work out and then go to the pool or spa or what have you. So now the next phase or the next element that I think is important to everybody is the landscaping. And our landscape architect is online. And this is a colored rendering that shows all the landscaping, which is quite generous in my opinion. But Scott, if you would like to embellish on my brief description of landscaping, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. I like to think of landscape in terms of zones. So this site gives us the opportunity to do evergreen planting along the perimeters. Kind of a layered approach that would be evergreen hedges. Privet can get 12, 15 feet. Back that up with evergreen cypress and pines. These are all suited to our region because I'm well aware of the soil and the wind in our area. So I thought that those plant combinations would do really well. Fast growing. I've seen the Afghan pines that I'm proposing do 3 feet a year in growth, up to about 40 feet. And I could accomplish something like that with about 10 feet of planting. We have up to 35 feet in some of the perimeter areas for this planting. So what we're showing at this scale is actually simplified, because once we actually get in and do a planting plan, we have 35 feet from the property line to, say, the first parking space to create these buffers. And that's a lot of space. What I was going to mention is that after looking at the architecture, we then step into the building planting, which is a completely different list of trees, things like tulip tree and pistache. And of course, our friends, the architects, always keep those trees as minimal as possible in their graphics, but those trees that I'm proposing could probably get twice the size of what we're showing graphically, because it's best to see the buildings at this phase. But to be honest, a pistache gets 40 feet, tulip trees can get 60. So there's an inner core of deciduous trees around the buildings that would back up our evergreen perimeters. So think in terms of layering, and I think you get a sense of how the landscape, the parking lot trees would actually step up as we go towards the buildings. They get bigger. The trees that we're talking about, big canopy trees, probably use specialty trees like crepe myrtle, flowering trees around things like picnic areas, tend to be smaller, more ornamental. Entry to the community building, really kind of detail those areas. We've got a magnolia down at the bottom here. It's a tropical magnolia. It's not the big magnolia that most of us are familiar with. It's called a star magnolia, but it fits in with architecture quite nicely. And the other one that I really would like to talk about is the podocarpus, which is up in the upper left corner. It's an evergreen. It's extremely dense. It's one of those kinds of shrubs that, it gets to the size of a small tree, but it can be kept nicely with architecture. So it doesn't have branching problems. It doesn't have root problems. It's really a versatile tree to use in these kinds of projects because it fits right in with parking, buildings, walkways. And again, well suited to Fairfield, Sassoon soils and wind. The ginkgo at the top middle, it's an example of a columnar tree. And I like to use columnar trees around these kinds of projects because these are selected from the original varieties, but they're tall and thin and will keep that shape over time. They won't conflict with the buildings. They won't overhang the property line. There's a whole collection of columnar trees now that have come out, maples, oaks, and then ginkgo, that, again, I like to use them around multifamily projects because they keep that nice shape and they don't create any kind of conflicts around the buildings, the parking, the perimeters. Now, the last thing I was going to talk about is our water quality basins. Those are great opportunities for open space. You know, not usable, not a mowed lawn, but visually, they will be kind of a no-mow condition and back up things like the pool club and the barbecue pavilion behind the pool club. That's almost 35, 40 feet of green space in that water quality basin before you get to the property line. So it would be kind of a lush year-round green space that isn't really maintained like a lawn, but it'll be a pretty substantial green space for anybody living in this project. And I'm really looking forward to working with them because they're quite a nice kind of wild element that fits into these projects and gives some space and some breathing room on these. So we've done them at Green Valley. It's a really good example of the Green Valley Creek in Cordelia that would be planted with very similar materials to these basins. And over time, they become established lawns in effect. So if anybody has questions about those, Green Valley Creek is a really good local template where housing and commercial have fit right into these kinds of basins. Russ, what else do you want to highlight?
I think that, well, go ahead, Scott. I'm sorry.
I wanted to talk about the masonry walls on the perimeters. There's a really nice block design that I've been using that has different textured units that we can flip and create banding. We can create detail, and it's a step up from a very simple masonry wall. So we can actually use the block materials and finishes to put a little more detail into these walls. And I think there's a photo in the project description. I don't know if it's on this.
I saw the photo earlier, but I don't see it at the moment.
But at any rate, it's a wall I've been using in projects in Vacaville, Fairfield, and they're pretty well received. And that's a big part of kind of meshing this whole landscape approach. So there's going to be a lot of thought put into those kinds of small details, even down to the block.
Thank you, Scott. I think that pretty well covers it. Now, just so for clarification, along Blossom, there'll be a wrought iron fence, 6 foot high, that'll allow some visibility out to Blossom. And the masonry fence starts at the intersection of Blossom and Railroad and runs this entire length and then truncates right here up against the self-storage site. Then outside the wall will be a 4 foot landscape strip of low grasses and shrubs. And then the 10 foot sidewalk that pathway that I talked about earlier. So I think that pretty well covers that. And really, I don't have much more to add at the moment, but we're certainly here to answer any questions. I wanted just to present some of the highlights that we talked about tonight. We believe this is a well-designed site plan and we try to minimize any impact to the neighborhood and at the same time foster a quality lifestyle within the project. It's consistent with zoning and planning. It's certainly irrefutably using an underutilized site in developing a quality project. It's got its usual challenges as an infill development, but we think we've overcome most of those. Provides some needed inventory for residential opportunities, and we think it's appropriate from the city standpoint. We've complied with all the development standards and design guidelines of the city. And I want to add that we're going to be delayed on our planning commission hearing. Originally, it was scheduled for May 25th, but now we're moving it to, I think it's the 7th or 8th. It's the first Tuesday or the second Tuesday in June. Let me look at that real quick and I'll tell you what that is. But we're just doing some additional studies that we wanted to bring forward to the benefit of the project. So it'd be June 8th at 6:30 p.m. And we'll have to send out, repost it and renotice it. But just for everyone that's on tonight's call, that has been delayed by 2 weeks. So with that being said, I'm ready to answer any questions, or there may be questions of Scott or Seraphin. And we're ready to field those kind of questions.
Hello,
Hi.
yeah,
Hello?
PD here, a real quick question. I just wanted to know, once the development is established and done with, and the building transitions to sales and all of that, what plans or what is in place to continue the maintenance of all of the landscaping, the greenscape?
Well, FPA has its own management team. It's a Trinity Property Consultants. They're very well experienced in maintenance of all of their properties. And so they've got a regular handbook on all of this property maintenance, building and grounds. So the FPA group takes very great pride in maintaining their projects and properties in the highest standards based on the industry. And so it's the more that they maintain the property in its condition and nurture its landscaping to the extent that it embellishes the lifestyle, the better the residents would like it, and it continues to hold its value. FPA holds all their properties for long term. They do not put them out on the market, and so they're very, very experienced, as I said, in regards to the grounds maintenance. So I thought Barbara had her hand up, but maybe it was Barbara that I was talking to. I can't tell.
this is Barbara's husband, Walter. I'm using her phone because somehow my laptop did not connect with that same number that we were using. My question is, are these going to be for sale or public housing or low-income housing?
No, sir. They're not for sale. It'll be workforce entry-level housing for folks that don't have that. Well, actually, apartments provide opportunities where folks don't have the wherewithal, perhaps, to get into a single-family home, or they don't wish to get into a single-family home. It's perfect for, young professionals that are transitioning in life, or folks that are retiring and don't want to, maintain the yards and whatnot, and just the workforce in general. So no, that this will not be a condo project, which would be for sale project, nor will it be a low-income housing subsidized project. These will be regular folks, working folks that would like a place to raise their children, or just enjoy life, if you will. Does that make sense, Walter?
Okay.
Yeah,
that does. Thank you for you answering that. So the other question is, how is that going to affect, because I was reading it's 3 stories, and I'm thinking 3 stories is right behind our yard. They're going to be able to really, how's that going to affect the privacy of all the homes along Amber Drive that have a backyard facing that wall?
well, as Mr. Volmer explained, the landscape architect, number one, we're set back on, if I went back to the site plan, and let's try to kind of go back through it, Walter, but this is a good example. This faces the folks that live on Amber Drive, and you see that this is the south end cap of Building 7. And you see the windows on these buildings are high transom type windows that the residents can't see out, but that lets light into their respective units. So even though the building's there, they're not going to be looking down. Number one, they're not going to be looking down on the homes along Amber. And if they could look out of these windows, got on a step stool and try to peer out, in time, the vegetation that we're going to be planting along that south boundary line, I think that's right here, the trees and the hedges that would grow. This is a 6-foot fence, and this hedge could go double that size, and then these trees tower over the hedges if they could see out. But you can see that we designed it in particular so they couldn't see out. So, and the same treatment happens on building 1, which is near the entrance. I don't have a detail like I have of this, but that was our goal, is to try to maximize the privacy of the residents adjoining.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be just the yards, it would be our bedrooms, our bathrooms, everything. Okay, well, thank you for answering that.
Understood, and that's why we brought forward the architectural specialty treatment on these particular buildings.
Russ, could I add something real quick?
Of course, Scott.
I just looked at our plan. It's 75 feet from that building wall to the property line.
That's
just
correct.
to give people an idea of the distance there. The other thing we're proposing is specimen trees to come in from day 1 at 9 to 12 feet, so that there's no waiting on that boundary planting. I think it's specified pretty well that we'd come in with some specimen evergreen trees from day 1. So
yeah, I guess I have one more question. The other concern I have is it looks like 180 units, and the Blossom and the other street, they are pretty much 1-lane streets. How are they going to be able to handle all that traffic? You know, families coming in and out during morning and rush hour, in the morning and evenings, since both of these streets are 1 lane. Is there anything going to be done about those streets? Or they're going to stay? They're going to remain the same?
Well, that's the last element that I mentioned earlier in the conversation this evening, Walter. That's the last study that we're having conducted by a professional traffic engineering firm, and they're going to look at the level of service at that intersection. This firm, Fear and Peers, has been working for the city of Sassoon for quite some time, looking at not particularly this intersection, but intersections both to the east and the west, Tabor Railroad and Sunset Railroad, and then also we're going to look at the Travis Sunset intersection. But that's the whole purpose of this third-party consultant, is to look at the impacts that may or may not result at that controlled intersection. The good news is it's a 3-way stop, so there's queuing opportunities, and level of service is measured in terms of seconds delay. Furthermore, this project is an element of the cumulative impact, which means projected out to 2035, and if this area built up and would impact these adjoining intersections such as Tabor and Sunset, we're already built into the model of the traffic for the long-term, the long-range planning for traffic impacts. So we're part of the cumulative that's already been part of the studies. So this was the last minute study that we decided that we ought to have for the benefit of the neighborhood. And that's in progress as we speak, Walter.
Awesome, thank you. Now, in speaking about the benefit of the neighborhood, the common areas that are mentioned, the dog park and everything else, is that open to the entire public, or is that just for the residents?
Just for the residents, sir. It's
okay, perfect. That's good.
Part of what they bargained for when they decide they want to stay.
I kind of figured that would be the answer, but I just want to ask anyways. All right, well, thank you.
Now on the other hand, there's guests of residents aren't prohibited from coming into the project, so
Right.
befriend one of the residents and maybe you can come in and use the pool.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm not much of a swimmer here, but just I'm just more concerned with it attracting even more people and stuff like that that are not part of the neighborhood. That's what I'm more
No,
concerned.
it's not intended to be a public facility that would result in additional traffic. This is just for
Perfect.
a lifestyle opportunity for the residents, that's all.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for answering my question.
Of course, my pleasure. Are there any other
And
questions?
have you guys started talking to the city about calls for service from police, like emergency and everything? It's my understanding with Sassoon City, their fire department really only has 2 paid fire department or firefighters. The rest are just kind of volunteer. So with this amount of people coming in, how are they going to handle calls to service? Because as of right now, there's about 6 other apartment complexes within half-a-mile radius from us.
Well, to answer that question, we didn't. The city hired an environmental consultant, and they did what's known as an initial study, mitigated neg deck documentation, where they analyze public services and demands on public services. With respect to the structures themselves, all of these buildings will be sprinkled. And they'll have, be a full hydrant system on site, as well as there'll be riser rooms, and each of the units will have sprinkler heads in it, so that this is as state of the art as can get with regards to residential housing. This is in response to code changes that occurred about 3 or 4 years ago. I don't recall the exact cycle, but they required, the California state required all residential structures to be sprinkled. And so they've got an advantage that if a fire starts in one of the units, it should be extinguished by the automatic system that's on board in each of the buildings. So, I mean, it doesn't stop the call to the fire department coming and making certain that everybody's safe, but it is a preemptive measure that's available and will be implemented in the project. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and I know that you guys kind of touched base on this about the workforce entry pricing. What's your ideal price range that you will be pricing these units at?
Well, I don't have that data in front of me. There's other elements or other factions in the FPA multifamily group that we could and will answer those questions ultimately, and we could probably find that out. The price point is probably relevant to the market to some extent. However, this is the costs and the fees, the permits, the impact fees, anything that goes into this project, and by golly, the cost of lumber nowadays has just gone through the roof. So all of that sort of impacts your investment, and you've got a return on investment, but you're certainly not going to price yourself out of the market. You're going to have to make it to where it's attractive and people can afford it. So there's a balance there. And I don't have the price point I can give you, but I can seek that out. We're going to have another meeting set up for this the same presentation. However, I may be Kim, who I work for, that is the presenter on that meeting night this Thursday. And then we also will probably publish one more meeting in a couple of weeks by mail, by postcard, to enable last minute questions or any refinements we might have made between then and now, prior to the Planning Commission hearing. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Will all the units be the same?
No, there's 1, 2, and 3 bedroom opportunities, different sizes. There's fundamentally about 5 different units. I think there's maybe 4. There's a single bedroom, single bath. There's 2 bedroom, 2 bath, 2 versions, maybe 3. with a little variation in the square footage. It depends upon what floor they're on. And then there's some 3-bedroom, 2-bath opportunities as well. We've got a mix. It's about 25%, and I don't have this exact number in my head, but it's about 25 to 20% 3-bedroom, 2-bath, mostly 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and then some 1-bedroom, 1-bath opportunities for couples or singles. So they range from 700 feet to 1,300 feet in size. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thanks.
I see EAS has a question.
Thank you. So you said the traffic impact report, that is to be done. Is that correct?
It's an operational analysis that's being conducted as we speak, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be very interested in that because I know that when traffic shuts down on Sunset, the Blossom Road becomes the thoroughfare to get into these neighborhoods, and the street up that way that's going to be towards this complex is bad enough as it is, and it's just going to get worse. So I'd be interested to find out what their findings are.
Those findings will be publicized or made public, if you will, and distributed to folks so that they have full knowledge, and we want to be as transparent as we can with respect to any environmental impacts that we may cause and may need to address. But it's in the hands of this professional firm that's very well thought of and highly respected. So we'll have those results somewhere towards the end of the month. And Annie, you have another question?
I do. I'm sorry. So I just want to be completely transparent about where we are with, or where you are with the city in this, like getting this application approved. When are we expecting the construction, and what's the timeline on getting this entire thing built out?
Well, we were supposed to go in front of the Planning Commission on the 7th of June. And shortly thereafter, we will close escrow on the property and we'll start to process our construction permits for the buildings and the site work. There are some regulatory things that we have to clear off and permits that we've got to clean up. So I believe this would probably be a consideration of June. This is probably going to be a second quarter construction start, maybe third, but Ron Wu is on the line, maybe. I think he's here and he might be able to speak to that. He's the project, he's the development director for FBA. But I would venture to say probably second quarter, about a year from now, to answer your question.
Russ, you got that right. It's going to be probably a late first quarter, second quarter 2022 construction start. And we would anticipate probably an 18-month construction period for this project. So full completion probably by third quarter 2023.
Very good. Thank you, Ron. Annie, you have another question?
Oh, no, I don't. I have to unread. Thank you.
Whoop. Okay. Does anybody else have any comments or suggestions that we need to field tonight? If not, we can adjourn. And if you wish to join us again on Thursday night, we could do so. Same time, same place, in front of your computer or your phone. So I'm of the conviction that, you know, the traffic analysis will come out that we won't create a significant impact, but we'll just see what the results are. And that's the last study that we're going to engage in and be prior to going to the Planning Commission. So it's sort of a cleanup matter, but it's important. And I understand its importance to all of you folks out there as well. It is to us also. So we're being cognizant of being, you know, becoming good neighbors in a piece of property, vacant piece of property that's zoned for this use. And we'd like to bring forward a quality project that everyone can be proud of. I see no other questions.
I do have one. This is Walter again, sorry. Is there any way we could go look at all these pictures and plans on more detail?
I believe that there's a full-size set at the city of Sassoon at the planning department. And if they don't have one, we can certainly have our architecture team prepare a complete set and FedEx it up to the department so they've got something in paper to look at. That would be fine.
Okay,
And
so
if-
then you don't have a website or any, or like,
We have a Dropbox link, but that to the project, and the city may have already published that as part of their notification of the hearing. So I'd look on the city website first and see if they don't have that information available, so you could preview it at in the leisure of your home. But if not, then going down to the city planning department would be a second alternative for you.
okay, we'll do that. Thank you.
Walter, do you have an email that I can contact you and
Yes,
help guide that process through for you?
yes, I'll send it to you right now.
Very good, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, it's 7 o'clock. We covered a lot of ground in 1 hour's time. And hopefully we haven't omitted anything that's relevant to anybody's thought process on it. Again, we're just trying to bring forward a quality project on a piece of property that's zoned for this use, and being highly cognizant of the joiners and trying to blend design elements with this, necessities for access, ingress, egress. These sites all require a balancing act, if you will, trying to blend all these things. But I think that our team, CBG and Architects Orange and Great Valley Designs and others who have been involved have done a terrific job, and kind of proud to bring it forward to y'all. So if there's no more questions, I think we could adjourn and bid everybody a good evening.
Yeah, that's fine.
Very good then. Thank you all
Thanks, Russ.
for joining us. Appreciate it. I'm going to end the meeting then.